Under 40 CEOs. Drive your ambition. Starting a business with less than 1 cent is unimaginable, however, not impossible. Join Michael Ugwu in this episode as he drives his mentor, Leke Alder, who started an international business with less than 1 cent.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to this show.
Thank you.
Under 40 CEOs, drive your ambition.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming and talking to me. You've been my mentor. I've learned so much from you. But for the people at home, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Well, simply, my name is Leke Alder. I'm a brand and policy consultant. I work in strategy. I help organizations and governments drive strategy. That's essentially what I do.
Okay, wow. So not just individuals, organizations and governments.
Yeah, so many. We do a lot of political work, but you're quiet about the political work because at that level, discretion is advised.
Oh, fully understood. That's the name of the game. Let us know. Obviously I know, but let us know how did you get started? When did you start? Your sojourn into business and entrepreneurship and all the amazing things you've done. How did you get set off?
It's a funny thing. I started with less than 1 cent.
Wow.
But my break came when a cellular phone, you call that cellular phone in those days, needed a strategy to drive their sales. They had 0 sales and they needed a strategy on how to drive sales. And I came up with an 8-page document that within 6 months netted the company 100 million naira.
Wow. 100 million naira.
100 million naira. That was crazy money in those days. I thought today it will be worth billions.
Wow.
And they paid me quite a substantial amount of money. I think they paid me 1 million naira.
Oh wow. Wow. That's a big start.
It was. I was in my 20s.
Wow.
And it's been one thing after the other, and good work and good referrals. Got into the embassies, the Italian embassy, the British embassy, the Brazilian embassy, the Italian Cultural Institute, the German embassy.
Wow.
And then we did this groundbreaking work for the corporate sector. Okay. We ranked the corporate sector brand-wise. We came up with the Alder brand report, and that broke branding in the corporate world.
Okay.
And those, there are so many milestones, but those are the things that you can see.
Interesting. It already sounds amazing. And if you're talking about, your first deal being so big, but I think you used the word referral.
Yeah.
Which I think, for me as an entrepreneur has been quite important, getting referred. So for you, what would you say, caused that referral? Did they like, the way you walked? Was it the way you dressed? Was it the quality of your work? What would you say?
When you're a young man and you just come out of school and you know nobody, your work had better be good and creative. And up till now, we don't have any signboard, we don't market, we don't do anything. It's been one good job after another that has been a referral system.
Amazing. For a lot of young people at home right now, we're seeing how, how politics can play into business. A lot of people kind of overlook it. We're seeing what's happening in the tech space now with regulation.
Yeah.
And, government stepping in and creating bad policy for business. Not always their fault. Sometimes they're advised wrongly. To you, from your perspective, what can young business owners do better to get ready for the political nature of business, because the politics is always involved?
Okay, first of all, let me define the role of the entrepreneur, a founder entrepreneur in a business, or a CEO in a business. There are 3 things you need to do. You have your local competence, your native competence. Say you're a coder or you're a specialist in strategy and all. That's a technical competence, okay? The second thing is that you are the custodian of the spiritual dimensions of the organization. By the spiritual dimensions, I mean the mission, the vision, the values, the personality, the brand, and all those things.
Okay.
That comes directly under you. The third thing is that you got to know people, you got to network, so that when problems arise, you know who to call and you know what to do. Nobody can do the political dimension for you. Only you can do it. And there's a lower version of it in which your underlings can relate to bureaucrats and get things done for the organization.
Okay.
But at the higher level, you got to know people. You got to know people in government. Now, what is happening in the fintech industry, especially, is not new. Incidentally, about a year ago, I called a special meeting, a quiet meeting, of all the guys playing in that sector,
Okay.
a number of guys playing in that sector, and I warned them that this will happen, and I told them what they should do. You know, I was prescient because, I mean, you know these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, some listen, some didn't listen. Between now and then, 10 of those organizations have folded up.
Oh wow, 10.
Yeah. And then, so they need to come together, because individually, it's not a battle you fight individually. Government is afraid because they don't understand the new economy. And government likes to control things.
Yeah.
So you got to educate government the same way that I had to educate the government, educate the industry, educate so many people when I was introducing branding. You got to protect your business politically, especially in an environment like Nigeria. So you got to identify people who can fight for you, because remember, you are outside.
Yeah.
And when they're taking these policies, they may not take those policies in consultation with you or with your interests at heart.
Yeah.
Someone can just go up there and say, ban this, you know, and it will adduce evidence why it should be banned. It's a selfish move that will wreck so many businesses.
Yeah.
But if you're not at the table, you're not at the table.
Yeah.
So you have to identify people like that, people who seem to understand and get you, you know, because if you don't fight for your business, you are gone. One day you are operating your business, the next day you are illegal. You know, and one of the advantages of being a mentor is the ability to share wisdom. You know, we talk a lot about strategy, but we don't talk enough about wisdom.
Yeah.
And you need wisdom in business.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one thing that, you know, I've learned from you is definitely that wisdom, and then being able to seek, you know, counsel. Most especially because I think, you know, sometimes, you know, the younger ones, you know, we have our experiences, but they won't be up to your experiences because you've seen a lot. And I think, you know, history often repeats, you know, itself.
I have seen a lot.
So I can imagine. I know, you know, from our conversations, seeking wisdom is very important. How do you, you know, I know based on our conversations, you know, you tie, you know, spirituality into a lot of our conversations, and I think you know, I've been more encouraged. You know, I'm a Christian. I do attend church, but I think that one thing based on conversations is that education and that knowledge you've given me in terms of becoming more spiritual. How important do you think that is for an entrepreneur, for sanity and things like that?
Well, you need mental and emotional health when you're running business, because it's a lot of pressure and the pressure never ends. And there are times when things get beyond you and you know you need to reach out to higher powers. And I don't mean it in the sense of something funny or something funky. I'm talking relational, a relational thing with God. And the mistake we make is that we tend to think that business is an isolation in itself. So whereas it's a 360-degree thing that also takes into cognizance family, spirituality, and the work itself, and your value to your community. I think you need to cover that entire quadrant. So I encourage people, when it gets beyond you, reach out to the person that is beyond you.
How do you categorize, you know, failure? Do you advise younger entrepreneurs to embrace it? Do you think that you know, the best way to do things is to fail? Or what's your perspective on an entrepreneur failing?
It's a conceptual incongruity. There's nothing called failure, because you can't be young and be a failure.
True.
So what happened is that you made some mistakes. But this is your life we are talking about, because the life of the entrepreneur is bound up in this business. So you can't reach a point in which you say you had failure. There's nothing like that. It's just that you made mistake, and when you do a linear regression, because I mean, the only for times you're dealing with so many variables. And when you compare variable to variable and everything, it seems as okay, so what do? You pick up yourself and go, because this is your life you're talking about.
True.
There will be challenges in life. There will be trials in life. That is the nature of life. And the bigger the crown, the bigger the challenges.
True.
As long as you are alive, as long as you have ideas, because it's about creativity, it's about imagination.
Yeah.
You know, creativity solves most problems. And most of the time, it's not as if you don't have a good idea. It's just that you didn't think through properly.
Yeah.
I found that a lot of people only think of business from their perspective. They don't think of business from the customer's perspective. That in itself can engineer what you call failure. Whereas it's not failure, it's just that they create a failure of a critical component in the value chain proposition.
True.
So your job as an entrepreneur is not to be discouraged by all the things that you see.
Yeah.
Your job as an entrepreneur is to take cognizance of those things and create strategies to mitigate them or to overcome them.
Yeah.
That's your job. That's why I'm saying that creativity is not an option.
You'd have seen a lot of businesses come, a lot of businesses go.
Yeah.
If you were to give your top 3, skills for an entrepreneur to really try to focus on, from your experience, what would you say the top 3 skill sets are?
Oh, that's a tough one. We can talk around it, but I hate to number 1 to 3.
Okay.
Because life never really plays out that way.
True.
But the first thing is don't be commoditized.
Okay.
Don't do what everybody is doing.
All right.
Be creative. The second thing is think big. People don't think big enough. Sometimes people come to me for mentoring, and when I ask them what's your revenue projection and they tell me what they can easily achieve, then there's no challenge in that. You know, you've got to give yourself a challenge that is beyond you.
Okay.
The third thing is that I'll advise people to build structure. And that's something that people don't want to do. They don't want to build an HR system. You know, what they don't know is that what they're declaring as profit is actually the salaries that are unpaid. You know, you've got to have structure. And the reason is very simple. You are biodegradable. Over time, you are going to wind down. You're not going to have the kind of energy that you used to have. And if you don't build structure at a certain point, your business will not get to the point in which it can survive without you. And anything can happen to you.
Yeah, I mean, those are all fantastic points. You know, I couldn't agree anymore with them, especially the last one, structure. I mean, but, you know, we talked a lot about business and everything. I think, you know, we'll just ask a question on you know, what you do to kind of like wind down, or what you do, you know, with family. What does an evening or a weekend look like for you?
My wife.
Oh, okay.
I married an incredible woman.
Okay.
You know, very loving, very kind, very sacrificial. Just a loving person.
Okay.
But the cheapest way I wind down is by going to the movies.
All right.
It's very cheap. You know, the more expensive way to wind down is to travel.
Oh, okay.
You know, that costs a lot of money.
Okay. Have you seen any standout movies that you want to recommend that anyone sees?
In terms of business, the movie that stood out for me was Wall Street.
Okay.
Remember Golden Gecko?
Golden Gecko.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason it resonated with me.
Okay.
You know, for some reason.
Yeah. Me too. Good film.
I tend to go for films that are like that are technically challenging, and you have to think through.
Interesting. So guys, you know, sometimes take the pedal off the metal, or take the metal off the pedal, and relax. You know, go watch a movie.
It never ends.
Yes, true.
It never ends. As we are talking, expenses are running.
True.
Utility bills are running. Security bills are running.
True.
Rent is running.
True.
You know, so business is a hungry animal.
Yeah.
You need to keep feeding it and keep feeding it, and you got to make the money. But it's a perpetual thing. So if you don't learn how to relax, you die young.
I agree. I definitely agree to that. Try to relax. I try to all the time these days. My thing sometimes is PlayStation. Funny enough, I like to play FIFA on my PlayStation. My wife will say I'm too big to be playing computer games, but
No, that's your salvation.
sometimes I do. But I mean, it's been great having the conversation. Is there anything that you want to just tell the youngsters at home, who are launching into business in Nigeria and across the continent? Anything any parting messages you want to leave them with for them to ponder upon whilst they watch this and rewatch this episode of all the nuggets you dropped today?
Cut the boat. Don't think of going back. You got to have the mentality that you're going to go forward,
Okay.
no matter what. So there's no giving up.
Okay.
But if you put your hands on the plow and you start looking back, you're not going to achieve anything.
True.
You're not going to achieve anything.
So true.
So commitment is the game.
Okay.
And knowledge is important. If you don't understand how to do something, seek help.
Okay.
Because you may just be one knowledge away from a billion.
Yeah, I hope I'm one knowledge away as well.
You've done very well. And I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's been amazing having this conversation. I'm blessed enough to be able to have these conversations with Mr. Alder in private. I think a lot of guys at home will be blessed just by watching this. Learning from it, learning from some of your experiences. And I consistently am, and I feel that you've said a lot of truths. Even things for me to ponder on. And every time we have a conversation, I do go home and I think about it, and I act on it. And I think that's the most important thing. Act on what you hear. Act on things that you think, okay, fine, as in like I could do this, I can do that, because anything is achievable. Mr. Alder's achieved so much, and he's definitely one of the visionaries of this our country. One of the captains of industry that we can talk about and say, okay, look, he did these amazing things. We need to go on and do amazing things as well in honor of him, and to show him that he hasn't wasted his time building this country. The other guys who have helped build this country. So thanks so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks guys at home for watching and for listening. And I think that's it.
Under 40 CEOs, Drive Your Ambition, brought to you by Mitsubishi, shot on Samsung. Masilia Motors, sole distributors of Mitsubishi Motors in Nigeria.